Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time. I'm here on He Said, She Said, They Said with Andrew Plank. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey everybody.
So we're going to be having a discussion on real estate in Victoria. Today we're going to be focusing on agency, and this discussion came up out of a few phone calls I got from agents last week. So let's just talk. First of all, how was your week?
Great week. Was off camping last week, so that was awesome. And then, enjoying the, not actually enjoying the heat, but sort of enjoying the heat. Because we have air conditioning, thank goodness.
We turned on our air conditioning for the first time in 9 years.
Yeah.
Totally crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, very, very blessed to have it. And anyway, we had the opportunity to go up to a cottage this weekend, but there's no air conditioning. So I'm like, forget it.
No, turn around and go home. It's just not worth it. Yeah, have your friends over so they without AC. Anybody, you're all invited to Jane's house.
So I have a question regarding your week in real estate. Are you finding any changes happening?
Actually, it seems, I've been feeling like in the past few weeks, it was going to start to get a little slower. And of course, with the weather, it tends to get a little slower. And then, I had clients, we wrote an offer. There were 7, we were competing against 7 folks. The price went almost 100,000 above asking. My clients did get it, but it was, they actually had to up their offer to make it work. And just still nuts in some areas, some price points. I think the higher price point might be slowing a bit, but
I think that there's a bit of a mistake happening with list pricing, maybe at the higher end, and there's a little optimism where they're pricing where things were previously selling, and I think that's I'm working with a buyer. We're looking at that price end up here, and I'm like, there's a lot of junk out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, people see what has sold. They assume that they can achieve the same. They may not have the same quality of product, and there may have been a specialty buyer for those. And it's such that higher end of the market is so subject to changeability. So winds of change.
What you're going to see when things change is the outer areas of Victoria, Greater Victoria, start to slow down, and then the price point will start to come down. So, hey, Laura June. Laura June is joining us from Vancouver. She was our guest when you were away.
Oh, right on. Hi, Laura June.
Okay, so let's just talk about what's happening in real estate in Victoria. So I formatted it so we can all read it today.
Yay.
Okay, you want to start us off?
Sure. So 242 new listings last week compared to 193 pending. So still more listing than are selling. Great. And we had 44 price decreases, 3 price increases, 2 back on market, 216 sold, which again that's just sort of based on mid-month, I guess. 12 expired, 4 withdrawn. So again, in this market, even in a super hot market, only 12 expired. So that's not actually a lot. So, but not everything sells. And
yep. So list to sale ratios 224 to 193. So that's significantly different than what was happening in February and March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more even before.
Okay, net unconditional sales are 811. That's compared to 808 last year, same month total. So we're nearly on par with our COVID. I think a rebound started to happen last year. And then new listings, 1,123. That's compared to 1,430 last year. A lot of them last year were condos at this point. And then active listings were still low at 1,476, and that's less than last year at 2,698. And I would say 2,698 is more normal than 1,476.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost half of what we were last year. So, I mean, not quite, but close enough.
Yeah.
Fraction, math.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about agency. And the reason why I wanted to mention it is because often as listing agents, tell me if this happens to you, you get a call And people say, oh, well, you say, are you working with a realtor? And they go, well, I wanted to talk to you because I don't want to bug my realtor right now.
Right. Or my realtor's at the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. My realtor's worked really hard for me, so I want to give my realtor a break, and I'm going to call the listing agent. And that's fine. Call us if you have some questions, but understand that you're sidestepping your agency relationship, right?
Anything you can will be used against you in an offer.
Yeah. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the negotiations. Because who's your responsibility to, Jane, when you're the listing agent?
The seller.
Yeah, your seller. And that buyer you don't know, and you don't have any loyalty to, and so forth. So you're best, actually, as I said, you can call the listing agent. There's no law against it, but it's best form to have your realtor communicate with us.
This is the face that's going to be presenting the offer, the neutral face who represents the buyers who complete, who aren't flaky, who don't ask weird questions. I am the filter through which you are going to be asking the questions. So sometimes I can actually answer the questions without even talking to the agent. So I'm not actually disclosing to them who you are as a buyer, right?
I didn't understand what you were saying. What did you just say?
Well, we have a duty of confidentiality. And so when I'm asking, I could be asking for anybody. If I'm asking the agent a question.
Oh, okay. So you're now wearing the buyer's agent hat and you're talking. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Can you start that again?
Okay. As a buyer agent, yes. I am representing many buyers, and I could be asking the question for anybody. And so when I present the offer, I'm presenting it as Jane Johnston, realtor representing this client. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have a reputation of people following through on their offers and being really solid buyers. And so you stand a good chance. But if I have to go in and fix the conversation that was had before where you disclosed your motivation, oh, I've been looking for a year, I really love this place, I really feel like my husband and I would really fit in the neighborhood with our 2 mm-hmm. kids and our 5 dogs, blah blah blah. And then you write the offer and the agent goes, oh yeah, they called me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they called me and they told me all of this. And now that gets translated over to your buyer. So, hang on.
Seller.
Yeah. Sorry?
To the seller. Yeah.
Sorry, to the seller. Yeah. My phone started ringing in my ear.
Okay. So let's just go over the form right now and then see what it says so people can understand what's going on. And I'll just bring it up.
When Jane refers to a form, we have a responsibility to disclose to anybody who does communicate with us around real estate, how they're being represented.
Right. And we don't have to go through this form specifically when you call right away. We have to go through it if we starting to get into a conversation about you and buying and selling. But if we're just representing the property, we don't have to get into the conversation. So this is the purpose of this form is that we have to follow it's a regulatory requirement. So we have to present this to you. And it talks about 2 different types of relationships you can have with agents. So the first one is as a client.
Left column. Yeah.
Right, which talks about that the agent is working on your behalf, that they have a duty of loyalty to act only in your best interest. The agent has a duty of full disclosure, so they must tell you everything that they know that might influence your decision in a transaction. So as a buyer, if I know something about the property, I have to disclose it to you. If I know other people are offering, I have to disclose it to you. And if I find out something about the seller, I have to disclose it to you because that might influence your decision.
Anything that could affect the decision. So it's a pretty wide swath of information that as we collect it, we need to divulge it back over to you. Whether we're representing you as a buyer or you as a seller, any information we collect about the other parties, about the other properties, realtors, anything like that. So,
and as an agent, we're not allowed to represent two parties, so we have to avoid a conflict of interest, and we're also not allowed to sell our own properties to our own buyers.
Right, because of course our best interest in selling our own property is to ourselves, whereas we have a duty to a buyer to also look after their best interests. And you can't do that when you're selling your own property. And then the idea we can't serve two masters. We have to avoid conflicts of interest. And of course, you'll see listing agents having many more listings than one, and you'll have buyer's agents working with more than one buyer at a time. So we have to avoid conflicts of interest where we can and disclose them when they do come up, because they do come up from time to time, and then there's something we have to manage around that. But we wouldn't be able to, if you think realtors charge a lot at this time, consider what they would have to charge if they worked with nobody but yourself at a time. It's
right.
Just not effective.
Right. So in terms of confidentiality, we cannot reveal your private information without your permission. And this is what I'm talking about when a buyer calls up the listing agent and starts disclosing things that they, that they think the listing agent should know about themselves, like, all this personal stuff, why they're buying the property, or maybe what they can afford to pay. It's really, really hard as a buyer agent to backpedal on that, because we're trying to present you in the most positive manner without revealing your information. And
not without your permission. And, obviously, and we've talked about buyer letters in the past where we actually talk to our buyers, and some people find this tactic or the strategy helpful, and some people don't believe it works. But I do find that the sellers do want to know something about the buyers of a property, but you need to put your buyers into the best light. And the reason for having a representative in the middle of the transaction, your realtor buffering you in this case, is we don't always know, and you don't always know when you're talking to the other realtor. If you call them directly, they will be, after having said, I represent the seller, anything you could tell me can and will be used against you. They would probably say that. And I've done that. I've said specifically that to people. And then they go, yeah, no problem. And this, and they tell me their whole life story. And not all of it is in putting them in the best light.
Yeah. Like, I'm getting a divorce from my husband, and we haven't got our separation agreement in yet. And
yeah. And I'll be talking to the mortgage broker next week, and, all of this.
Last week I had somebody drop my name as their agent. The agent called me, told me all about them. And I'm like, oh, I'm not working with that person yet.
But they've been watching you on He Said, She Said, They Said, and Island Time and all this stuff, and they know that they're going to work with you. Hello, random person out there watching right now who is working with Jane that she doesn't know it. You might want to reach out to her.
Aiden, give me a call. Okay. So then as a non-client, so this is when, let's say I've got a listing and you come up to me as a buyer, Andrew, you be the buyer, and I'm the listing agent, and you say, I want to write on this property. So we have to go through this form. Okay, go ahead.
Well, hey Jane, it's my name's Andrew, and I just saw your sign outside of 123. Oh, this is awesome street. I really like this home. And I guess I came through the open house, before COVID, and because we're not hosting open houses these days. I saw the virtual tour. Everything about it I love. I want to write an offer.
Oh, that's great, Andrew. Are you working with a realtor?
Nope, I'm not actually.
Okay, well, I represent the seller, so I cannot represent both parties. So
I thought you could.
No, sorry. It's written into the contract. Yeah, about was it 2 or 3 years ago? We changed everything.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So sorry, but
But
I
no
can
worries.
tell you.
I still want to work directly with you because I know I'll save some money.
What do you mean you'll save some money?
Well, you'll be able to kick back some commission, right? If I make a lower offer,
Actually, the
because you're getting all
commission.
the commission, right? Hmm?
You better listen, buddy. You're interrupting me. Well, Andrew, actually, the commission is set out in the listing contract before you even come. So I do not give a kickback. If I give any consideration, it would be to the seller, who is my client.
No, absolutely. But if you do give some consideration back to your client because you're not having to pay extra commission because there's no other agent, then I can save a little bit. That saves me a little bit of money because I
Yeah,
can
I
make a
don't do
lower
that.
offer. You don't do that.
I don't do
No.
that. Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
sidetrack you, but this is why a lot of people do call a listing agent directly.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is there's no incentive for me to bring you to this listing right now with that attitude because I'm putting my whole license at risk, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting me in an awkward position. And
Yeah.
especially if we go into multiple offers, if I have to represent the seller and I'm writing a contract for you, even as a non-client, I really, it's not perceived well by other agents.
No, this is a conversation I have with my clients as well, because when we talk about the fact that if there is no other cooperating agent, if someone was to write an offer in this, as an example like this, I tell my clients, that I actually actively discourage that kind of buyer, and I tell them to go get their own representation. And especially in a marketplace like this where there is expectancy of multiple offers, I don't want to be having any, even though I don't have duties to this person I'm writing an offer for, I don't want to have any distractions from my duties to my seller. And have someone who has said, I want to write this offer, and I have to then further communicate with them about what's, building their offer. And then when there is multiple offers, have any kind of further communication with them around. I just want to concentrate on my client.
Right. So as a non-client, just so you know, you will not get any representation other than we will provide you with a copy of a contract, which you will fill out. We have a duty of loyalty to the seller, and we do not have a duty to disclose all relevant information to buyers who are unrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have a duty to avoid a conflict of interest, and we have no confidentiality with you as a buyer. So everything you say, I actually have to disclose it to the seller.
Right. Yes, totally understand. And
Do you still want to go ahead with this, Andrew?
Well, the way you put it that way, do you have somebody you could recommend that actually could represent me?
I do. And how about I give you their name?
Sounds great.
Okay.
As you go back to that for a moment. And as you can imagine, the reason we have to disclose whether we're, as Jane just pointed on the screen there's a choice where we disclose that we're either representing or not representing as a client. And if someone does call up and starts asking questions and starts getting information, and Jane's a very charismatic person, and we're both good people, and they might start to think, hey, I like this person, and they're giving, I can rely on their advice, or they're giving me some good information here. I want them to be my realtor. And when they find out, actually, no, we can't actually do that. We're not able to represent two parties. Or even if we just get a phone call out of the blue from someone about a property we're not even listing, but we start a conversation with someone, but maybe we have another buyer for that property. We don't want to get into a situation where we create a conflict for our existing clients. We don't want to get into a situation where the client that has called, or the person that has called us, begins to think that they're a client, and when they're not, because that will just create confusion, hard feelings, and possibly a complaint to the real estate board. So we need to let people know exactly where they stand, whether they're being represented or not.
Right. And So if an agent calls, so I recently had a conversation with a client of mine whose boyfriend was thinking of writing, and she said that he met an agent, and apparently this particular agent had more than one offerer in a situation. We are not allowed to do that either. So I get asked sometimes by my clients, who, if you ever have more than one client who's interested in a property, and believe it or not, usually not. I think I could probably count on one hand, and that was before COVID. And if I do, I just deal with the first person who's interested. They write the offer. The next person, they get referred out.
You don't have the choice anymore, though, on that. So, I mean, the current rules are, if we are in a conflict of interest where there is two parties to a contract, whether it's a buyer and seller both interested in, buying and selling that one property, or two buyers for a property, where we are the representative for that, we can't choose who we continue to represent. We have to ask, well, we can ask permission to do that, but we have to get both parties' agreement. And if either of those parties don't agree, we have to step away from both. So that's the actual rule. But you're right. If you can, you want to continue working with the one who first wrote the offer, the first person who came to the plate. But everybody has to agree.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna say to somebody who I've shown the property to and who wants to write an offer that they can't write the offer with me. And then the second one, I will say, I've already got a client interested. If you want to see the property, I will refer you to somebody else. Like I'm not going to be in a situation where I'm going to have two current clients writing on a property.
Yeah.
So I draw the line when the second person requests a showing. I'm referring you to somebody else so I don't enter into that conflict.
I see. Right. When you've already established that somebody wants to write, you've now got, because I've been in situations where I've had, let's say the showings are all set up for a certain time because there's limited availability or it's a tenanted property. And I end up with 2 or 3 clients who are called to say, I want to see this particular property. It's a hot property. It's well priced, whatever it is. And so I have to have the conversation with all of them saying, great, I can show you the property. If you like this property, then we're going to have a further conversation, because if you like it and one of my other clients like it, then now this duty of avoiding conflicts of interest kicks in.
Yeah, but I think I understand what you're saying. I'm avoiding it before I get to the point. So I don't, like, if I show somebody and they go, you know what, I'm not interested, I say, okay, good. Then I'll go to the next client. I can show you this property, but I'm not going to.
This is where agency gets really complex and gets into a lot of us realtors into hot water and clients into confusion, because this duty of avoiding conflicts of interest, but also duty of full disclosure. At what point do you disclose you have other clients interested in that property, that you're showing it to somebody else? At what point do you right away, if in doubt, disclose, right?
Right away.
Yeah. And when our client says, I want to see that, I don't want to have to wait. Yeah, you definitely want to have that refer them out. And you still have to disclose to your current clients, if those other people do write an offer, that you have an agency relationship with those people who are being written through another party. And you still have to get an agreement signed by everyone, because you have duties to everyone of full disclosure, and you have personal private information about your other buyers. So even though you've referred them to somebody else, you still have built that relationship with them.
Oh my God. I think that's overkill. Like, the thing is, in real estate,
it may be, but it's the rules.
Yeah, I know.
So
we went to a course, I don't know, when they were discussing all of this 4 years ago, whatever. And I stood up and I said to the lady, do you know how big Victoria is? Like, we probably have 1 degree of separation. I probably had a conversation, and you're telling me if I have a conversation with somebody, I have agency right away. Like, that's a bit of, anyway, that's the hard line they were taking back then. And I said, and 5 years later, that person goes to write on a property that I'm listing. Do I have agency with them?
when the rules came out, there was a lot of confusion and I think a lot of overkill. And you kind of have to go back to, would a reasonable person assume that this buyer or seller feels like they are being represented at this time for whatever action that they had discussed with you at that time? And
So
no, but the confidentiality requirement remains if you had provided agency in that time, in that past. What happened during that container of that period remains confidential. Beyond everything else drops away. You don't have a duty of full disclosure after the transaction is finished.
So if you're referring a client out, do you have a duty of disclosure?
If I have an active client that I have learned their personal information and their motivations and what they like and what they dislike and their price points, and then I've got another buyer wants to buy, and this buyer and another buyer want to buy a property that's listed, I refer one of them out to another agent. I have a full duty of disclosure and a duty to disclose to the agent, the client I'm still working with, everything I know about the transaction, which includes everything I know about that other party that I'm working with. And that's yes.
No, because you have a duty of confidentiality with the other party.
And yes, but you have a duty of full disclosure and a duty of confidentiality. So you have a duty of disclosure to both parties that you're in a conflict. And so there's a form for that.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You're in a conflict, you have a duty to both parties, and you have to let your party know that you do have a duty to disclose and you can't. And so you need their acknowledgement on that.
How many times have you filled out that form?
Never.
Why?
Because I've been in situations where I've shown multiple properties to clients and looked like they were going to write, and then they didn't. So I didn't end up in that. I mean, I fully disclosed to everyone what the situation was, but I didn't get to the point of having to sign that document. But it is a document that is there for that reason. And I know we're getting really deep into the weeds, but it's true. And this is why it's really complicated, why this conversation's happening.
And this is why, as a listing agent, we don't want to frickin' double end people, because it makes us very uncomfortable.
Double ending means, again, with a listing contract, you are not sharing a cooperating commission with another buyer's agent. So the full commission goes to your brokerage.
Have you had a situation where you've had an unrepresented buyer?
Not in recent times, no. And again, because I actively discourage that. But again, that's one of those things that you have to, this is also something that you would need to discuss with your seller in some cases. Like I had a phone call from someone, I discouraged them from coming through me because I've already had this conversation with you, that this is what I would do. And you were in agreement with that. But it gets to a high level of, I mean, you don't have to disclose. There is that saying, if in doubt, disclose. And so there's some chance of over disclosure and people saying, why are you telling me this? But if someone is potentially a buyer and you send them away and then they end up not writing because they called another agent who showed them another property, you're going to get yourself in some hot water.
So the other thing is that when we are in a multiple offer situation and we have an unrepresented buyer, I would always let the other agents know there is an unrepresented buyer in this situation. And where that happens is in weird properties. So like you may have it happen like a strata hotel or whatever. I had it happen in a strata hotel where it's so complicated, and the buyer came to me, and I just made sure everybody knew what was going on. And that's probably the only time in whatever 3 years where I've had that happen. It's very it's just like, anyway, it's not comfortable. So what you're doing, if you insist that you want to work with the listing agent, they don't have to work with you, just so you know.
No. So you touched on something else around letting other agents know that there's an offer on the table from an unrepresented party. And so under the law of agency, it's a common law that says, we act as agent for another party. It means we actually can step into their shoes and engage in the role of buying or selling and negotiating as if we were them. And so it's a very high mantle of responsibility. And that overcomes a lot of our other duties to even to our professional organizations. And so we get into some conflicts sometimes where we have duties where we are supposed to follow our client's lawful instructions, and lawful meaning the legal law, whereas we have industry rules and regulations and duties of care to our colleagues, where we might actually end up in a conflict in that case, and it gets us all into sometimes some hot water around that, and it's very complex, and it's just something we all have to navigate and do in our own way. But as Jane said, she will let her colleagues know that there's an unrepresented party in the contract, because we do have a duty to treat our colleagues fairly and to, let them, not to tell them everything. Of course, that's kind of the point of being an agent and realtor, is to keep things in the container. But at the same time, we have a duty to treat our colleagues fairly and not to be lying, not to be doing anything immoral.
And we also have to ask our seller if it's okay if we have an unrepresented party or not, because we want them to be comfortable with the whole process as well. And so I was involved in a situation where a buyer contacted the listing agent, and the listing agent had a discussion with the seller that they were not going to have any unrepresented buyers in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was like, the listing agent just said no.
Mm-hmm.
No. And so the buyer contacted me, and I think the listing agent made a really smart decision, because it was a very awkward property, and so not everything is smooth. So I thought it was this is why we're having the discussion today, because I think it really speaks to the fact that you can be putting the listing agent in an awkward position by having a conversation where you're revealing too much. And we will say to you, we have an agency. If we feel like you're overstepping the bounds of what you're providing us, we'll say, we're working. I always say this: I'm working for the seller, and everything you say, I have a duty to disclose. So, and then they'll keep going, and you're like,
No, I know.
Please
don't tell me this. But, we also have a duty to collect that information, because our sellers would like that information.
Yeah.
I mean, so once we've disclosed that they're not being represented, if they continue to act as if they were represented, we do have to not act as if they're represented. We can't tell them they're not represented and then go show them properties and give them advice. Exactly. These forms are there for our protection and yours. These forms are not really necessary in a world where everyone fully understands the relationships that they're in and have all the disclosures just given as a matter of course as to how it should be done. These forms are here to help guide people to understand the limitations of what we can do and how we can do it.
And I just want to say, if we end up in this not representing you as a client, we also have to send you another form, which is a disclosure of representation in trading services, unrepresented clients. So
disclosure of risks to unrepresented parties.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But that one's only necessary if they are writing an offer.
Right.
It's not necessary if we're just having a conversation and have said no on this, tick no on this. We don't have to go through all that paperwork. And technically, folks, and I know we're spending a lot of time on this, we don't actually have to have you sign this form either. This is not a contract. This is just an acknowledgement. See, it says consumer acknowledgement, not a contract. all we're doing is saying, hey, you understand that I don't represent you, or you understand that I do represent you. And that can change in the future too, but this is where it is for now.
And I find this really helpful. I actually send a video when I send this to clients explaining this so that I'm consistent.
Yeah.
But like when I send them this, the non-client, they realize, oh, that's why I don't call the listing agent.
There are people who do not want to form a relationship with a realtor. They feel like they are going to get better service and more fast response if when they see a listing, they call about that listing, they get some answers, they see another listing, they call about that listing. They just probably don't have a great agent experience in the past, or they had a stellar agent helping them as a buyer's agent, because it's my strong belief that trying to play the field does not get you anywhere in real estate. You are not going to get the answers. You're not going to get the advice. You're not going to get through the properties you want to see. You're not going to get, you're going to end up buying an overpriced property from, you're going to buy an overpriced property without representation, thinking you got a good deal because it was priced, $50,000 under assessed value, but it's got major problems with the property and all kinds of things that just you would have found out had you had representation.
So I was in an open house once, and a buyer came through and told me everything. And I'm like, I'm representing the seller here. Yes, yes, yes. Are you working with a realtor? No, no, no. And then she left, and they think they're being smart. Then the buyer wrote the offer. Meanwhile, I had told the seller all of the information I had obtained during the open house. So I wrote a report. The seller realized the buyer motivation. And so when the buyer came in with a reasonable offer, the seller countered higher.
Knowing that it would be accepted. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really not smart. Anyway, I find that people who are research oriented and kind of high knowledge type people really shoot themselves in the foot because they ask so many questions. They reveal a lot about themselves. So I just want to go over this one last form. This is a privacy notice and consent. And this is just to let you know that we do collect information at the board level about sales, what the sale price was, and we share that back to you. We don't disclose, what your name was and other information, but we share information about the property and who bought it for what price. And so that's so that you are able to make a decision about purchasing, and it's for your information.
The intent of this form is because of Canadian privacy laws, to let you know that your information is required for purposes of the MLS system, that it does get collected to some level, that your realtor may continue to be in contact with you for various reasons after the transaction, if we wish. And as you can see in the right-hand side, you can opt out of a number of different ways of communication. I would recommend, and I always recommend to my clients that, if they want me to be able to continue to communicate with them, please don't opt out. And if you want to have no other realtor communicate with you, I have really no control over that. So that the next one to check really makes no difference if you check it or not. The real estate board will never contact you. It's really just for your collection of information. So it's an interesting disclosure form because it's really like, we need to use your information, and we have this requirement to disclose this to you. But if you want us not to be able to communicate with you, it makes it really hard for us to help you.
I've had people sign it, and I'm like, did you mean to sign that? Tick those little boxes? And they're like, well, isn't that what you wanted me to do?
Yeah. Well, it's like people we have a property disclosure form where there's an information page on the front of it, and people always put in the date on this little example thing where it's an example of the date, and it amuses me no end because it's not something that we're supposed to fill out. But people don't read these things. They also say to initial everything in the property disclosure form, and people are always check marking it. One other thing I want to touch on around represented versus unrepresented. Back in the days when we were doing open houses, I would have someone come through an open house, and I always ask, who's your agent, who is representing you? Some people don't want to disclose that. Some people do engage in a conversation with you and ask a lot of questions and say they're very interested, but they don't want to give your information. And they'll all call you. So then you get an offer on the property from somebody else through another agent. You don't have any way to call that person to say, hey, I've got an offer. So if they were just to tell me their agent's name, I can call that agent, say, hey, look, I just got an offer. Your client came through the open house. They seemed quite interested. You might want to give them a heads up.
And we have a duty to respect that agency. And so we're going to call the agent up.
We want to work with our colleagues. We want to, yes, absolutely. So, and that's the last thing to, maybe not the last thing to speak on with this, but we have a duty not to infringe on another relationship. If we have someone come into an open house, or someone calls us up on the phone and says, I'd like some information about this property. And they say, somebody calls me and says, I'm working with Jane Johnston, but she's up at the lake at her cottage and I can't reach her.
Never happens.
No, you have your phone with you all the time. But they're calling up. They don't want to bother you. For some reason. Maybe it's not Jane. Maybe it's somebody else. Regardless, they call me and they say, hi, I'm working with Jane. I've got a few questions. Great. You know, I represent the seller. You're represented by Jane. I'm happy to answer your questions. Again, don't tell me anything you wouldn't want Jane to be able to tell me. I'll probably get off the phone and say to Jane, give Jane a call or send Jane a text. Hey, your client ABC gave me a call. I'm not going to say, hey, you know what? Jane's a great agent, but I'm a better one and I can really help you. And I really want to work with you. And here's all the reasons why you should work with me, because I am not going to intrude on Jane's relationship with her clients. That's just, not only is it schmarmy and wrong, it goes against all of our codes of ethics and so forth. So we will respect and should respect a client relationship. If you're unhappy with your client relationship, then you certainly have the right to talk to another agent about what they can provide you. But we should not be trying to poach somebody else. So this is why I'm saying you're kind of safe to call another agent, but you're not safe to call another agent. It really depends.
Don't call another agent.
It depends on who you call and who you get. No. Don't call another agent.
We just explained why not to call another agent. Don't call another agent. Here's what you do. Okay, let's say your agent's away. Your agent should have somebody who's representing them while they're away to help you. So just give your agent a call. Your agent will have somebody substituting for them. They'll show you the property. If you want to write the offer, either they will write the offer or your agent will write the offer. But don't call the listing agent because, well, you can call me anytime. Anytime.
This is what I'm saying. You can call.
And it's going to be great for my seller.
Know what you're getting into if you do call and hold yourself. But you're better to call through your agent. You
know what this is?
Talk to the hand?
Dun, 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 dun.
You're the shark.
I'm the shark.
Cold-blooded Jane. Look at those teeth.
No, seriously. I don't know. I've done numerous videos on this and I'm like, seriously, folks. Let me do another analogy, a quick analogy. Let's say I'm dating Andrew and I want to go to the prom. And Andrew's away this weekend. And so I'll call up his best friend, Steve. I'll say, Steve, can you take me to the prom? Andrew's going to be mad. Right? Because I have a relationship with Andrew. I've only met Steve like 5 minutes ago, and I'm giving Steve all the power to negotiate for me. And that's just dumb.
Steve might be better looking. It might be a step up.
But you really, just think about it. Like I often used to say, think about agency in terms of dating. And you don't want to cheat on your agent. And you don't want to cheat on yourself because you won't feel good about yourself. And if in the end you write without your agent, there's a lack of trust there that you can't recover. So
there's huge piece of that is trust. And, we do work on trust. We often don't have buyers under buyer's contracts. Some agents do that consistently where they do have a buyer contract, some don't. Some operate on handshake. Which means, again, that we're trusting that that person, when they find the property they want to buy, if they find it through another means than through their agent, they will call us, they will communicate with us. This is a two-way street. This is a relationship. And when we are representing you, it's our heart goes into what we're doing. We are really fully engaged in it. And if we find that we're working with someone, and to use Jane's analogy, if we are trying to date someone who we know is playing the field, we're not going to invest too much energy into that relationship either. And although we have duties that we just talked through, they are legal duties. But if our heart is not in that, we are going to have a harder time fulfilling those duties. Those duties are there to help enforce the law, but how these things function is through relationship. And so when you forego the relationship or circumvent it, or, it makes things harder. So having that communication, that trust relationship with your agent, and helping your agent, letting your agent do this for you is so important.
Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of beat this topic.
We really have. Yeah, we really have.
But it's so important because it can cost you as a client thousands of dollars if you are indiscreet. And I always say, like, if you're listing a property, don't tell people why you're selling. If you're buying a property, don't tell people. I've had a situation where a friend was buying a property and their friend heard about it. They went to see the property and they bought it out from under them.
Yeah. And don't post to social media what you're doing in your negotiations, or why you are selling, or even sometimes that you are selling, but definitely not why you are selling and what's going on and how you're getting frustrated with this or that. Whether you're a buyer or a seller, keep that stuff to yourself, because people you don't know who knows you. A friend of a friend, something comes through. Yeah.
This is the cone of silence.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my husband thinks I talk too much, and but I'm actually remarkably indiscreet. I mean, discreet. I'm remarkably discreet. I don't tell people stuff.
We sometimes give examples of something that's going on has gone on for us in real estate. We do not out any particular person or property. We will talk in general terms. We will talk about something that may have happened a long time in the past. If there is a way to identify what it was and it's something that would work against our clients, we would be ill-advised to share that. Yeah.
And just to use a dating analogy, like find an agent who jives with you, with your personality, who has the same interests, who can understand your perspective, because that just makes the whole situation way easier, and they'll get you. And if you understand one another, if you get one another, it just flows so much more easily.
Jane refers sometimes to people of different characters where they may be like high knowledge, as she refers to, and so forth. Find someone who speaks your language. Find somebody who understands you and who you understand. When they're explaining the situation, when they're going through, when we just walk through all of these documents, maybe awkwardly, maybe at length, but sometimes depending on who we're with, we will go into depth in it, or we will go over it really quickly because we know that they're understanding it and we've had a quick conversation around it. So It's about knowing who our clients are. It's about having those conversations. It's about giving time to our clients. We are adaptable. We can work with many different types of people, but we're not for everybody.
Yeah, and actually a really good example of that last week, I was walking through a property with somebody and I just realized they're not the client for me, and that's okay. So you just, it's like when people go into a house, they know. And I always say to them, you don't need to pretend like to look for 10 minutes. If you don't like the property, we can go. And they go, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how many people will think they're being polite to you. Well, we made the appointment. Yeah.
Okay, but if you do make an appointment, you do have to show up. Okay.
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
tell us who you are.
Well, I'm Andrew Plank, and I'm a realtor. I've been in the marketplace since 2006, same as you. And I am licensed with Royal LePage. I am an ex-director at the real estate board. I am 6'4", and Jane and I did not go to the prom together.
Okay, what's your number and how do they reach you?
You can reach me if you do want to go to the prom. Give me a call. I'm at 250-360-6106, or you can email me info@andrewplank.com.
And you can visit his website at andrewplank.com.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay. And my name's Jane Johnston. I've also been in real estate since 2006. What's your number? 3782?
What?
What's your number? 3782? Or
My phone number?
3784? No, your real estate number.
3782. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm 3783.
So
Andrew's better than I am.
I'm older in real estate by one.
So if you want to reach me or you want to have fun with Andrew and me, you're welcome to call me at Jane Johnston, 250-744-0775. You can reach me at briarhillgroup@gmail.com. And I have two websites. One's briarhillgroup.com. The other one is vancouverislandtime.com. Those are for people who are relocating to the island and want to know about neighborhoods. Okay, my darling, next week we are going to have our real estate update. If you guys ever have any questions about what's going on in the market, please email us and we will answer it, or you're always welcome to post in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, have a great week. You too. Bye.
Bye.